So let's get started with the big show tonight, and we're going to start in Ukraine. And things are not going well in Ukraine. As we've been covering here on the show, there's a fracturing of the fake relationship between Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky and President Biden. It's like a trio. You know, you can't keep them all, keep track of them, all of them. So over the past 24 hours, we've seen European Union leaders going on like an apology tour, and they're they've flown in, they didn't fly in, they actually took a train. I mean, the rail infrastructure is fantastic in Europe. So they actually took a train into Kiev to meet with Vladimir Zelensky, a number of European leaders. And as Reuters is reporting this afternoon, EU leaders visit Ukraine after criticism and offer European hope. Now, this criticism, remember, they got in sort of like a shouting match back and forth. So what happened is you had Olaf Scholz, you had Emmanuel Macron, and you have Mario Draghi from Italy give this little world tour where they drove in to Ukraine to hold talks with Zelensky, basically saying, hey, don't worry about it. We are going to continue to support you. We've taken in over 800,000 refugees in Germany, says Olaf Scholz. We're going to continue to support Ukraine as long as it needs. You also saw Olaf Scholz flying into Serbia the other day, remember, where he was pressuring Serbian President Vučić to make sure that they're going to sanction Russia. So they are going full court press to try to make sure that Vladimir Zelensky is happy. But the same thing can't be said of what's happening from President Biden and actually some other NATO allies, which we'll get into in a second. So they have this sort of fake relationship, right? This sort of puppet relationship. I mean, is it fair to say, like, you're not really a friend if, like, we tell you everything to say, right? If we put you in a place and we tell you what to say and we feed you talking points and we're giving you everything, that's not really a friendship, right? That's kind of, I mean, you're a puppet, basically, is what you are. So here's the Daily Beast front page. Judgment Day is coming for Zelensky. That's the front page of the Daily Beast. And let's go through this article a little bit because really interesting.
Which let's point out this is a left-leaning rag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should point out, like, the Daily Beast, let's be honest, is pretty awful. And they do hit piece after hit piece on conservative journalists. So they are absolutely a left-leaning rag. And if I'm not mistaken, because back in my day, I knew some people from the Daily Beast when I was an anchor in New York City. And I think at one point then Chelsea Clinton became a board member of...
Yeah, she still is a board member.
Oh, she still is?
As far as I know, she still... Yes, as far as I know, she is.
So what they're saying in this piece is Zelensky's position. So Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and his advisors have been arguing in recent days that they don't want to cede any territory to Russia in an ongoing war in Ukraine. Now, this is an interesting about face, right? Because a few months ago, we were hearing that Zelensky was ready to come to the table and make some concessions. And then Western leaders were like, no, you can't. There's no talk of peace. You cannot talk peace. You can't go in there. And of course, Henry Kissinger came out and said the only way that this ends, of course, is if Ukraine cedes the eastern portion of its territory to Russia in the Donbass region. That's it. Like, you've got to hand that over, and then you can come to the peace talks and have a settlement agreement. But this Daily Beast piece says, Zelensky's position, which he and advisors have repeated countless times, is well supported through the country. 82% of Ukrainians are against giving up that territory. I'd like to really dive into that poll and see some of the polling data exactly on that, okay? Zelensky has said Ukrainian fighters are capable of pushing back Russian forces, and even suggested they want to push Russia back not just to pre-February levels, but wind the clock back all the way back before 2014. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's going to happen. So again, this reckoning that you're hearing, and the Washington Post also covering this story and talking about the incredible pushback that Washington is now providing. So here's the Washington Post.
Wait, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Really quick, before you move on from that last statement that you read saying that they're pushing back against the Russian 2014. Are they actually trying to blame Russia on the how the Donbass region was attacked by the North? Like, is that what they're trying to do there?
Well, that and Crimea. Yeah. So they're trying to say we want to wind the clock back pre-2014 Minsk agreements. Like, and wind that territory back. Good luck with that. Why don't you go back 200 years while you're at it? Why don't you go back even before, to in the 1800s?
Before cell phones.
Yeah, go back even further than that if you can. So they are right now facing this new reality where Zelensky, he's going to be back at the negotiating table. And so they say in this piece, Zelensky knows it's not a matter of when, not if he'll be back in the negotiating table. And said last week he thinks this war will be decided on the battlefield. But eventually, admitted eventually he will be trying to make a deal once more. He says victory must be achieved on the battlefield. Okay, so that's what he's saying now, but it seems odd because a few months ago, he was ready to negotiate and have a negotiated settlement, and Western leaders said, you better not. And Boris Johnson, remember, flew in to make sure that there was no peace. Why? Of course it's money. It's, of course, the military-industrial complex. So here's the Washington Post article. Put this back up on the screen if you'd be so kind. For some in NATO, it'd be better for the Ukrainians to keep fighting and dying than to achieve a peace, right? That was the Washington Post piece, and that's sort of the NATO framing of it. It's better for the Ukrainians to keep fighting and dying than to achieve a peace. We know that's the case. We know that's what they want. We know that they want to use Ukraine as as just a proxy battlefield and the total destruction of Ukraine. Noam Chomsky, of course, has said there's two ways that this ends. Either Ukraine is totally destroyed, or there's a settlement and an agreement with Russia. Because as Scott Ritter, I sat down with Scott Ritter in an interview that's going to air in a few days, and one of the things he says is this is absolutely going to end badly. We have been watching every detail of their communications. We've been involved actively in battlefield coordination. So this idea that we don't know what's going on or don't have a coordination with the Ukrainians is absolutely absurd. And we control everything. Watch this.
You're 100% right. It's more than that. We have a hand in glove relationship with their intelligence services. CIA has had one of the largest stations in Kiev, because it wasn't just about being in Ukraine. It's about using Ukraine as a window into Russia. The interactivity between Ukraine and Russia was immense, and so we had our CIA office there, and they were literally using their post in Kiev to spy on Russia. So it's a massive effort. And then we got involved in what's called information operations or information warfare, where we work with the Ukrainian intelligence services to shape public perception by, disseminating misinformation, lies, sometimes disseminating the truth. It's not always. Russia's not perfect. Russia makes mistakes, and sometimes, it's used to take these mistakes and bring them to light. But we had been working with the Ukrainian intelligence services hand in glove for many years prior to this, trying to spin what was going on in Donbass, trying to spin the Crimea, et cetera. So when this conflict started, we already had in place a gigantic machine where the CIA is working with the Ukrainians to spin this data. And the one thing about spinmeisters is they have to know what their objective is, which means they have to know what reality is. So the CIA knows exactly what the truth is on the ground. Their job is now to shape perception so that the truth is either highlighted where it needs to be highlighted or suppressed where it needs to be suppressed. So we have absolute insight into the thinking of the Ukrainian government via our connections with the intelligence service.
Yeah. So we know exactly what's going on there, and we've been absolutely working with them hand in glove for years, going back, even prior to 2014. So the only way this ends is with the total destruction of Ukraine or a peace agreement where Ukraine gives up the eastern belt of the country. Now, I sat down with Kevork Almasian, who's a journalist who's been in the Donbass region, and he says Russia just needs that eastern belt section, and it's absolutely game over. And we can stop talking about this being an endless battle, and we're going to push back pre-2014 levels. It's a joke. Listen to what Kevork has to say about this.
First of all, Russia is not going to lose this war. And anyone who says Ukraine is winning, they don't know anything about the war. They don't read maps. if you check the map of the control over Ukraine, you know how Russia is grabbing the land in order to turn Ukraine into an inland. So it will deprive Ukraine from its geopolitical importance. Russia doesn't need to occupy Ukraine. They just need to occupy from Donetsk, the Donbas region, okay, all to Mariupol and all the way to Odessa. Just the belt. And when they do that, Ukraine is irrelevant. They will lose their geopolitical importance, and they will lose the wheat. And this is very important. The food security that we were talking about. So after this war, Russia will be in control of like a very big share of the energy and a very big share of the wheat. So it will have Russia will come out of this war stronger, and those who will pay the heaviest price are the European countries, and especially Germany.
Especially Germany. So no wonder, we're going to get to Germany just here in a moment. It's how important Germany is to this entire thing. So you have this back and forth now where the White House, and you see Western intel, you see little newspapers starting to throw Zelensky under the bus, saying, you know, that they're failing. They're eventually going to have to come to the peace table, which is interesting because all of those Western rags a few weeks ago were saying this, no, they need to fight. We need to send more weapons. We need to send more weapons. So there's this weird like dichotomy unfolding right now where you have European leaders taking a train, getting into, arriving in Kiev and saying, hey, we are with you. We are with you. We're going to continue to funnel weapons here. So here's the Biden.
Well, and one thing too, real quick, is just like people need to understand that this was, everybody calls it a Russian attack on Ukraine. Understand that if Russia would have actually wanted to attack Ukraine, they could level Ukraine. So this was a liberation. They only want to liberate people that want the ethnic speaking Russians in the Donbas region and the Beltway area. So this is a liberation because, like I said, if they decide that they're going to go in and they're going to think they're going to attack Russia, then you're right, they will get destroyed. But the thing is, like, it's been painted as that's what it is. It's been painted that Russia has attacked Ukraine, but that is not the case.
Yeah, and so of course you have that. You know, Russia calls it a special operation, and there's of course the debate in the Western media. You know, where did this begin? Of course, if you go back to 2014, that's where it started. So the White House today, once again, here's a statement from President Biden calling for the additional support for Ukraine. So let me just read through this. I informed, this morning I spoke with President Zelensky to discuss Russia's brutal and ongoing war against Ukraine. I reaffirmed my commitment that the United States will stand by Ukraine as it defends its democracy and supports its sovereignty and territorial integrity. So now they're going back on this once again to remind us all. And it says, I informed Zelensky that the United States is providing another $1 billion in security assistance for Ukraine, including additional artillery and coastal defense weapons and ammunition for artillery and rocket systems. Now, Scott Ritter said here on the show the other day, if they're asking for all of these additional things, that means they are out of those things. If they need additional artillery, that means that people died manning those artillery stations, 4 or 5 individuals that were shot and killed and destroyed, and now they need additional artillery. It is not going well for them. And the Deputy Defense Secretary, Kathleen Hicks, also yesterday, she was at a tech event. She was interviewed about this, and she says, we're prepared to fund the war basically forever. This is Kathleen Hicks here. She says, Ukraine will survive, and the U.S. is preparing to arm it for years, says Kathleen Hicks. Are you ready? I mean, are you guys ready at home to be arming Ukraine for years? When the only way that this ends is a settlement.
Like you already talked about and clarified that there's no accounting for where any of this stuff goes. So we don't know where the money's gone. We don't know where the weapons are actually going to end up or where they're going. Like there's the word on the street is they end up all over Europe and possibly in other bad hands. So there's no accounting. There's no trail. I mean, that's what Rand Paul was trying to get added to that bill was some kind of accounting. But we'll probably never know where any of this has gone. The over 54 billion now, all these weapons.
No, as we've covered here on the show, I mean, we've talked about the black market that has now emerged. So there's a very robust black market for selling American weapons We showed you the websites. We showed you, it's like an eBay for the dark web where you can actually go and buy our Javelin missiles if you want. $30,000 starting bid for one of our Javelin missiles that we just sent them for free. $30,000 starting bid just to buy some of those. And then not to mention Stingers and other weapons and heavy weapons and guns and ammunition and everything else. So take my laptop if you would here, Philip, because the deputy here's what she said. The deputy defense secretary, she says, I think we can assure ourselves today that there will be a country called Ukraine. It will be a sovereign country, and that country will have a military that will need to defend it. And also, as we look ahead, we're thinking through what are the kind of capabilities that the Ukrainians need to protect themselves over the long term. So what does that mean, right? I mean, because we just announced an additional long-range artillery, helicopters, heavy weapons to Ukraine as part of that $700 million arms package. But we're looking now 5, 10 years, or 20 years in the future. So as Americans can't pay their bills, you can't buy food, you can't pay for gas, we're looking 20 years into the future. Like, that's how far the Pentagon is thinking about Ukraine right now. And so, again,
it's just another money funnel for like Afghanistan. They're like, Afghanistan's gone. Where can we funnel money? Oh, we were already funneling money into those labs. Let's just do Ukraine. They're a corrupt government. We can probably do some good stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, and we predicted this, didn't we, on the show? I mean, we knew that this is exactly what a proxy war is, right? It's we're going to carry out an endless war against Russia. Our goal is to sort of grind down Russia so that they are sort of squeezed into submission over 10, 20 years. That's a new form of a Cold War that we want with Vladimir Putin.
I don't know, though. Like, when Philip brought up that point, like, what point does it become no longer a proxy war? Because we're providing the weapons. Some U.S. soldiers actually got captured by Russian soldiers the other day.
Yeah.
So is this really a proxy war? We're providing all the weapons. We're telling them what to do. We're actually, like, our generals are talking to Zelensky and saying, hey, you should do this. So, like, at what point does it stop being proxy?
I know. I guess we can get into semantics. I guess if we had like a land invasion of U.S. infantry, I guess that's when it's no longer a proxy war. But, in the stages of modern warfare, does that even matter anymore? We're sending drones, we're sending helicopters, we're sending heavy weapons, we're sending everything else. We are literally working with them hand in glove, giving them intelligence targets and GPS coordinates and everything else. So what more do you need? We and I love that she said in that piece, she said their sovereignty. They're not sovereign and they're not a democracy. We're basically running the show over there. So what sovereignty, what democracy are you talking about?
And it's like if a United States bomb hits a Russian target, right? The bomb that Zelensky had and he shot, he didn't even pay for it because we've sent him that for free. So isn't that still our bomb being shot at them? So it's like we're still in there because would it be different if Zelensky actually purchased the bomb? Like, okay, so they purchased it. Now Ukraine owns it. So technically it's not a U.S. bomb at that point, but they haven't purchased anything.
Well, no, and a lot of it, if they have, it's done on debt, right? So they're actually in debt now to the United States, and so they're in debt to the United States to buy weapons, to have money, extra money funneled into that country. And as we saw over the past 24 hours, NATO weapons. Russia has said that they've hit NATO weapons inside of Ukraine. Now, they've publicly said that, which we know that's been happening for a long time. As soon as some of our heavy weapons arrive, they're hitting these targets. So it just is like an endless cycle of weaponry. And hey, Raytheon's doing well. Their stock's up. Boeing's doing well. All of these big defense contractors are doing well. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.